just been released this week by the famous Arcadeforge. I'm sure a number of you guys that have watched various other videos on my channel realise who Arcadeforge are. Amongst other things, they were the company that developed and produced the SLG 3000, which is a scanline generator. Arcadeforge themselves have brought out other various bits of equipment that I've reviewed on my channel, and their latest release of retro hardware is the SLG HD, which I sort of showed a bit of a montage about at the start of this video, but that is the device there. So what is the SLG HD, and I suppose really what does it provide over and above the SLG 3000? The SLG 3000 was actually for accepting inputs that were of a D sub 15 variety, and actually an output that was D sub 15. So whilst that was absolutely great for consoles like the Xbox 360 that natively output a VGA a D sub 15 output, and of course with use with things like scalers and line doublers, so you could, you know, use it in conjunction with well, whatever scaler or line doubler you were using. It worked extremely well with the GBS scaler, the eBay scaler. Again, I'll mention that on my site. You've seen various reviews of that. But it was limited in some ways for a certain type of retro user. As I'm sure you can imagine, a lot of game players over in the US don't always have access to VGA connections on their TVs, for instance, and to be honest, the same is with us. I'm sort of relating that back to US guys that have got HD CRTs, because they're still pretty big in America. Never really made it big in Europe, but they're certainly big in America. And of course, America has never had SCART RGB input, and nearly all of their screen type devices have component on them instead of SCART RGB. Now I know the SLG 3000 doesn't output in SCART RGB, but just bear with me for a moment. So for consoles like, for instance, PlayStation 2, which has component output, the original Xbox, which has component output, the Wii, which has component output, and various other consoles, they were a bit scuppered, because they would have to then buy a line doubler or scaler to fit between that device and their TV, if they wanted to use something like a scanline emulating device. So and with the production of this device, because it's got component input and component output on it, it does actually mean that you can use this device to sit between your console, your actual console, and your output device. Certainly if you're in America, that is an absolute bonus at the moment now, because the fact this does have a component output on it. So again, if you're from America, you can use that to directly feed your HD CRT, if you've got one, and that's what you use as your connection method. It doesn't just stop there as regards to being quite a big benefit for people in the US. It's also a benefit for us guys in Europe, because what this actually means, and you have to take it on a console by console basis, and in some ways Arcadeforge have perhaps missed a trick with this, because if they bought this out 2-3 years ago, I think they would have made an absolute killing on this, with one specific console in mind, and that's the Wii. The Wii has got a pretty notoriously bad component output, and as I've shown in previous videos, if you overlay the image with a scanline emulation, it can help clean the image up a lot, makes it a lot sharper. Now, whilst I wouldn't state that strictly what you should be doing to all your video sources as regards to overlaying a scanline image, because I actually still believe that scanlines have their place as regards to being emulated on a bit of software that was originally had scanlines. Well, of course, all the Wii games, or a lot of the Wii games, apart from any of the virtual console stuff, and wasn't actually designed for scanlines. But let's put that one aside. What this enables you to do then is to actually take the component output from the Wii, plug it straight into this, and then take the output from this and plug it straight into a normal LCD, plasma or whatever, and assuming that you're running, obviously if you're running component from your Wii, you're going to be in 480p mode, so you can enable the scanlines on that, and it makes a massive difference to the picture. But the bonus about it is you only need this device. You now no longer need a scaler to sit between the Wii and something like the SLG 3000 or this. You can basically just use this on its own. So this device has been tested to work with 480p sources, with 720p sources, and with 1080i sources. So you can see that it is certainly geared towards the American HD CRT market, but it works wonders for us guys in Europe and the rest of the world for certain consoles. I've actually tried this into my directly via component into an LCD for PlayStation 2 with 480p games, and it works faultlessly. It works faultlessly with the Xbox 360, works faultlessly with the original Xbox on component. It will work with GameCube on component if you're lucky enough to have one, but of course if you've got a Wii you can play GameCube games on that anyway, so that's absolutely fine. So basically anything that outputs a component signal you can pass through this, and if you're playing, you know, if you're playing sort of older type retro releases, Xbox 360's got a number of them obviously, you can overlay scanlines over it, and like I said, you don't need a scaler there or anything, and it will work, in theory it will work with any HD target device because they've all got progressive inputs on them. But like I said, you know, for me personally, I think it's a massive plus for us European guys for use with a Wii, because it makes a massive difference to the image. You know, it works as good as the SLG 3000 as regards to quality wise. The scanlines aren't quite as dark as what they are on the SLG 3000 because of the way that this device works with component signals. It's not quite the same as RGB signals as regards to the way that the actual scanline intensity works, where you can alter that. It is slightly different. So it's but apart from that slight nuance, and it is a very slight nuance, it's a brilliant device. It really is. And like I said, you know, if you've got a Wii, I would wholeheartedly recommend you get one of these devices. And there was a fellow YouTuber that did a review video fairly recently actually, of him running a GBS scaler with the SLG 3000 to crispen the image up. Well, of course, now you don't need any form of scaler now. You can just plug this in line with your Wii straight to your target device, and you'll get exactly the same results. So it's a real great device. It has just been made available this week from Arcadeforge. I will stick a URL to that link in my comments. I suppose a couple of things about the device really with regards to what's on it and what it looks like. Now this is a prototype version, so the actual final release version that's available now is slightly different, and I'll sort of go over that now in case you're expecting it to be exactly the same as this. It won't be exactly the same, but it'll be near enough. So you've got input and output. You know, that it's nothing exciting, it's just phonos. So you've got the phonos there, and on the other side you've got another set of phonos. So that's red, blue and green. The actual unit itself needs to be powered by a 5-volt PSU. Arcadeforge sell them, and it's the same PSU as what they have supplied previously with their other retro devices. It will work exactly the same, and obviously that goes on the side there. Now something worth saying as well on this video is that I have actually tried it with a couple of PSUs. I've tried it, one of the ones that Arcadeforge actually send out, and there's absolutely no problems with that at all, as you'd expect if they're supplying it. I actually tried it with another 5 volt PSU, which is regulated, and there shouldn't be any problems with it at all, but it caused problems on this as regards to instability with sync with the LCD. So just be careful with that. As regards to what PSU that you use, I'd recommend you use the one from Arcadeforge. They're not expensive, so I'd buy one of those. You know it will work then. There's an on-off switch on the side there, so you can actually enable or disable scan lines. If you switch it off, it doesn't cut down the video signal. It just means there's no scan lines on it, so you just shut off the emulation or the overlay effect. On the other side of the board, you have a switch there which you can actually use to switch between odd and even scan lines. So what that would do is, if it's in even, it will mean you'll get a scan line on the 2nd, 4th, 6th, 8th, 10th, 12th, etc, etc line. If it's on odd, it will be 1, 3, 5. What that basically means is you'll see that scan lines will move down a line or move up a line depending on what offset you're using. You may want to use that functionality to get slightly better alignment on scan lines on the screen, but again, you just switch that, and depending on which offset you prefer, you leave it as that. And now the difference on this unit, because it is a prototype version and the final version, is the fact that on mine I've got a rotary scanline intensity resistor, variable resistor, which again, if you've got the SLG 3000, you'll be familiar with that. That's actually been replaced for the final version with 3 dip switches, so you can actually change the scanline intensity between, I think, minimum, medium and high scanline intensity, but it's based on dip switches instead of a rotary doobry like that. And that's about it. I suppose the other thing worth saying is as with Arcadeforge's other items that they've released, you will be able to, at some point in the very, very near future, buy the plexiglass or the plexiglass, whatever you call it. Yeah, it's plexiglass, isn't it? Covers for this, so you can get it all looking nice and swish and neat and funky. So that's the device, the SLG HD. It's certainly a worthwhile device if you want to make use of a component, and it's certainly a great device if you don't necessarily want to get anything like a scaler, but you want to overlay scan lines on an already 480 progressive output via component from your consoles. I hope you enjoy the video, guys, and I'll speak to you again soon. Right, so then, guys, just to sort of finish off this technical video, I thought I'd give you a couple of quick demos of this device working on my Xbox 360. Like I said, the results are virtually the same regardless of what type of console that you're using with it. I suppose just to make a slight correction on using a term that I use throughout the introduction part of this video. I used the term scaler quite a lot. I didn't actually mean strictly scaler, I meant transcoder. So if we replace the term scaler with transcoder on my verbose technical description of the device, it'll be a lot more accurate, so I apologise for that. But getting back down to actually what this looks like. So this is the Xbox 360. It is Darkstalkers, which is a recent release for the Xbox 360. And this is the game itself in normal component mode, straight to my LCD screen. Now the Xbox itself, to get the most realistic type of output that I prefer, certainly for this type of game, I've set the Xbox 360 to output in 4:3 mode, so it's not widescreen, it's 4:3, and you'll see the benefit of that in a short while. So if we just zoom in a bit onto there, you'll see that it looks quite crap actually, doesn't it? A bit blurry and yeah, not great at all. If I switch on the SLG HD, you'll see immediate difference, hopefully. and it'll just settle down, and there we go. Right, so that's for the scan lines. So hopefully you'll see a massive difference there, and certainly to the naked eye, even though you can't see it on the video camera, it makes a big difference to the clarity of the image. I suppose if we zoom out a bit there, you'll see it sort of slightly clearer. So again, let's turn it off. That's off, and that's on. Now if we actually go back to the game, that does make a big difference. If I come out, you're not going to see it from that sort of distance, I suspect, but again, if I turn it off, that's without and that's with it on. And again, if we come in, you'll see those glorious scan lines. So again, that's on and that's off, and that does look pretty crap actually, that does, with it off. Turn it on and it just looks so much sharper, you know, but you guys were used to this if you already know about the SLG 3000. But if I come out a bit on that camera angle, even though this is on a widescreen LCD, I've set it to 4:3, so I get none of the borders as regards to the sort of overlay borders you get on these games where you'll get some graphics on the side. It is in a proper arcade type aspect ratio, which for this game is absolutely perfect. So we've got Decimals Mega Black Label version. Again, we'll come in now, and you'll see, I mean, that just looks absolutely mint. It really does. We look at all the characters, and it's perfect scanline overlay there, as you would expect. And again, let's switch that off. So that's off again, and that's on. Didn't want any tutorial, apologies. That looks absolutely beautiful, it really does. Look at the character, and if we turn that off, and that's normal component 480p, overlay scan lines. So hopefully guys, that will give you an insight to a bit about the actual device itself, and also what it looks like on an LCD screen and how it works with component. Hope you enjoy the video guys, and I'll speak to you again soon.